Before law, there was balance. Before any civilization carved commandments into stone, before kings declared decrees or empires wrote their codes, the world itself rested on an older truth, a truth born in Africa. In the beginning, there were no rulers, no scriptures, no temples. There was only the rhythm of existence, night and day, flood and harvest, life and return. And from this eternal rhythm emerged Ma'at, the force that held creation together. Not a rule, not a doctrine, but a cosmic balance woven into the fabric of reality. In the ancient Nile Valley, long before the rise of Greece or Rome, the people of Kemet believed that the universe was not random. It breathed, it listened, it responded. They saw the stars trace perfect paths, the river rise with precision, and the seasons move like clockwork crafted by unseen hands. To them, this order was not an accident. It was Ma'at, the sacred principle that made life possible. Where later civilizations would invent laws to control people, Africa understood that the first law was already written in the cosmos itself. Ma'at was older than religion, older than kings, older than the temples that would one day stand along the Nile. She was the pulse of creation, the invisible thread binding all things: truth, justice, harmony, reciprocity, and moral clarity. She existed before the world had language to describe her, before humanity had the courage to name what it felt. To walk in Ma'at was to walk in alignment with the architecture of the universe. As we enter this story, feel the presence of the ancestors who whispered these truths into the dawn. Feel the gravity of a world where morality was not enforced by fear, but inspired by harmony. This is not just history. This is origin. And in the beginning, before any law was spoken, there was balance. She is often pictured with a single feather on her head, light, elegant, unassuming. But do not be fooled by her grace. Ma'at is no mere goddess of myth. She is the pulse of the cosmos itself. In the ancient worldview of Kemet, Ma'at was not simply a divine being. She was principle made form, a living embodiment of the truth that keeps stars in orbit, rivers in rhythm, and humanity in alignment. Where chaos threatens, Ma'at restores. Where lies distort, Ma'at reveals. She is not law in the legal sense. She is order, sacred, cosmic, and infinite. To understand Ma'at is to understand the African conception of reality itself. In Kemet, truth was not an abstract ideal or a moral suggestion. It was a force, a frequency. The people of the Nile believed that the universe operated according to fixed principles, not commandments imposed by a jealous God, but natural harmonies that had always existed. Truth, justice, reciprocity, balance. These were not values to aspire to. They were the very scaffolding of the world. When one lived in Ma'at, they were not following rules. They were attuning to a sacred resonance that kept the soul, society, and stars in sync. This is why Ma'at is inseparable from the idea of vibration. The ancients did not see morality as a checklist. They saw it as sound, as harmony. Just as a musician must tune their instrument to join an orchestra, the soul must tune itself to Ma'at to remain in harmony with creation. This is the origin of African ethical philosophy. To be ethical is to be aligned, not out of fear, but because alignment is truth, and truth is life. The symbol of the feather is central to this understanding. Light yet powerful, the feather of Ma'at was used as the ultimate measure of a soul's life. In the Hall of Two Truths, every heart was weighed against it. Not weighed against punishment, doctrine, or dogma, but against balance. Did your life disturb the harmony of the cosmos? Did your actions add to its flow or subtract from its rhythm? The feather did not accuse, it simply revealed. and this alone determined whether your soul could rise or fall. This vision of the universe is radically different from later systems built on command, control, and fear of eternal punishment. Ma'at requires no external enforcer. She is self-regulating. She is embedded in everything. When justice fails, it is not Ma'at who disappears. It is we who are falling out of tune. And when truth is forgotten, it is not because Ma'at has faded, but because our hearts have become heavy, cluttered by lies, ego, and disconnection. Yet Ma'at is forgiving, because Ma'at is ever present. One can always return to the rhythm. One can always step back into the balance. In this way, Ma'at is not only divine order, she is spiritual possibility, a pathway back to harmony in life and afterlife alike. Her wisdom governed everything in Kemet. The way rulers ruled, the way scribes wrote, the way the people spoke and lived and judged. To violate Ma'at was not just to break a rule, it was to fracture reality itself. So what is Ma'at? She is the song the stars sing in silence, the whisper between breaths, the thread connecting right action to rightful consequence. She is the sacred architecture behind all being, and those who knew her did not fear her. They revered her, because to walk with Ma'at is to walk as one with the universe. In the worldview of Kemet, the soul was not a single, simple entity. It was a constellation, a sacred system of parts, each with its own role, its own path, and its own weight in the grand journey beyond the veil. The ancients understood the human being not merely as flesh and breath, but as a layered being composed of Ka, Ba, and Ib. To know yourself was not just to ask, who am I? But how many parts of me are in harmony? The Ka was your vital essence, the life force gifted by the divine at birth. It was your energetic twin, the unseen current that sustained you through every moment of existence. As long as the Ka remained, you lived. At death, the Ka did not vanish. It returned to the source, waiting, watching. It required sustenance, ritual, and remembrance. It was the pulse of being itself. The Ba was your individuality, your personality, your voice, your uniqueness. It was often depicted as a human-headed bird, capable of flight between worlds. The Ba could leave the body in dreams, visit the ancestors, and return with wisdom. It carried the echo of your character, the flavor of your choices, and the imprint of your life experiences. It was the soul in motion, dynamic, expressive, remembered. Then there was the Ib, the heart. In Kemet, the heart was not just a physical organ. It was the seat of consciousness, memory, and moral truth. The Ib recorded everything, every thought, every word, every intention. It was your internal scribe, quietly noting the weight of your life. When your body returned to the earth and your Ka to the divine, your Ib carried the story forward, unedited, unforgotten. The journey of the soul after death was not an escape. It was an alignment. When life ended, the soul did not seek paradise or fear punishment. It sought resonance. The soul answered a call, the call to the hall of two truths, where Ma'at would be waiting. This sacred chamber was not a courtroom, but a mirror. It did not ask, were you perfect? It asked, were you balanced? Here, Anubis would guide the soul, Thoth would record the proceedings. And the 42 divine ancestors would stand in witness, not as accusers, but as aspects of universal law. Your heart would be placed on one side of the scale. On the other, the feather of Ma'at, not weighed by gods, but against the vibration of truth itself. This was not judgment in the sense we know it. No eternal damnation, no divine wrath. It was a moment of harmony or dissonance. If your heart was light, free of falsehood, cruelty, imbalance, it would rise, you would become an ark, a radiant ancestor. If it was heavy, it would fall, not as punishment, but as natural consequence. The scale never lied to the people of Kemet. Death was not the end. It was a return to Ma'at, a sacred recalibration, a journey back into balance. There comes a moment in the soul's journey when silence becomes cosmic. The air is still. The realm is not of earth, but of eternal truth. The soul has crossed the veil and stands at the threshold of the most sacred place in existence, the Hall of Two Truths. This is not a hall built of stone and timber. It is a court carved from principle and presence. A temple of justice not ruled by fear, but by resonance. Here, balance decides all. The Hall of Two Truths is the sacred courtroom of the universe, where the full weight of a soul is not judged but revealed. It is called the Hall of Two Truths because truth is not singular. There is the truth of speech and the truth of action. The truth of what you say and the truth of what you are, both must harmonize for the scale to remain balanced. At the center stands Anubis, the guardian of the threshold, part man, part jackal, and fully divine. He does not speak. He guides. With steady hands, he leads the soul to the scale. The same scale that has measured countless hearts since time immemorial. This is not the first soul to pass through, nor will it be the last. The scale is timeless, and Ma'at does not change. Near the balance stands Thoth, the scribe of divine truth. With his ibis head and moon-crowned wisdom, he watches with sacred precision. His task is not to interpret, it is to record. Whatever happens here will be written not in ink, but in the eternal memory of the cosmos. His scroll bears no opinion, only the facts of vibration. Silently observing, seated upon the throne, is Osiris, Lord of the afterlife, King of the silent West. He does not rise. His presence alone is enough to command all attention. He is the ruler of the domain beyond life, the judge whose gaze pierces all illusion. He represents eternity, the final destination for the soul that passes the test. And then to the side of the scale there is Amut, the devourer. She's part lion, part crocodile, part hippopotamus, a creature of composite chaos. She does not threaten, she waits. She does not roar. She watches. Amut is not evil. She is balance's final guard. If the heart is found heavy with falsehood, it is she who consumes it, returning it to the void. The soul is not punished. It simply ceases to continue. Surrounding the scene are the 42 assessor, divine principles given form. Each one stands for a truth, a law, a vibration. They do not accuse, they do not forgive. They observe. They bear witness to the soul's alignment or lack thereof. With Ma'at, it is the presence that creates the sacred weight of this moment. Here the tension rises not from fear of punishment, but from the soul's anticipation of truth. The moment before the weighing is timeless, a breath held by the universe. What follows next is not verdict, it is revelation. And then, the laws are spoken. Ma'at was never just an idea confined to the afterlife. She was the blueprint for life itself. The spiritual force that shaped Kemet did not remain in temples and scrolls. It built cities, governed courts, and crowned kings. The civilization of Kemet was not simply advanced in technology or wealth, it was advanced in harmony. Every element, from law to architecture, was designed to reflect Ma'at, the sacred symmetry of the cosmos. The legal system of Kemet was built on Ma'at. Judges were called priests of Ma'at, not because they performed rituals, but because the rulings were meant to reflect cosmic truth. Justice was not vengeance. It was restoration, balance. In disputes, the goal was not punishment, but to realign social relationships with the universal order. Even the poorest person could bring a case forward, and every case began with an invocation of Ma'at. Pharaohs themselves were not above Ma'at. They were measured by it. The ideal ruler was not a dictator, but a living embodiment of balance. Titles like
beloved of Ma'at, or bringer of Ma'at, appear in royal inscriptions, revealing that a king's legitimacy came not from conquest, but from how closely he upheld the principles of harmony, justice, and truth. To rule without Ma'at was to invite chaos, Isfet, the opposite of cosmic order. Even architecture followed Ma'at. Temples and pyramids were aligned with cardinal points and star systems, mirroring the heavens. The layout of cities reflected sacred geometry, ensuring that spiritual, civic, and agricultural life remained in sync. In foreign policy, Ma'at guided diplomacy. Treaties were written in her name. Trade, alliance, even war, all had to be justified through the lens of balance. Ma'at was not abstract. She was living law, the invisible architecture of an entire civilization. Before pyramids pierced the sky and temples echoed with the name of Ma'at, the spirit of balance already lived in the soil of the Nile. And beyond Ma'at did not begin with dynasties or scribes. She emerged from a much older African memory. In the earliest layers of Nile Valley thought, long before Kemet was unified, people organized their lives by the natural order they observed, the cycle of water and flood, birth and return, speech and silence. These were not just environmental patterns. They were reflections of a sacred equilibrium. What would later be named Ma'at. In pre-dynastic times, before kings ruled from stone thrones, communities held a shared reverence for the seen and unseen. Harmony was not something to impose, it was something to honor. The early societies of the Nile practiced rituals, built aligned sacred spaces, and lived by an unwritten law of balance that connected the family to the cosmos, the earth to the divine. This was Ma'at in its primal form, before language gave it shape, before empire gave it scale. And Ma'at was never confined to the Nile. Across the continent, the spiritual language of balance echoed in other names. In Southern Africa, the concept of Ubuntu spoke of shared humanity. I am because we are. It is the relational expression of Ma'at, ethics rooted in interconnectedness. In West Africa, the Yoruba word Ace described the divine force that flows through all things, energy that must be spoken, respected, and aligned. The Igbo of Nigeria hold Ofona Ogu, and the philosophical essence of Seriti in Southern Africa identifies the spiritual weight a person carries, like the feather and heart among the Bantu Congo. The Dikenga cosmogram mapped life in a sacred circle, charting balance through birth, growth, death, and rebirth. A diagram of harmony, not unlike the celestial alignments of Kemet the Dogon of Mali, taught about no more. The creative word, a principle that brought harmony through sound and speech. Ma'at as vibration once again. These were not parallel philosophies. They were expressions of one ancestral rhythm, spoken in many tongues. Across the continent, balance was not just a goal, it was the law of life. Ma'at was never Egypt's alone. She was Africa's first language. The 42 laws of Ma'at are not laws in the modern sense. They are not commandments shouted from a mountain or decrees enforced by punishment. They are declarations of alignment, sacred affirmations spoken by the soul as it approaches the scales of eternity. Each begins with the phrase, I have not. But these are not denials of wrongdoing. They are reflections of a life lived in rhythm with truth. In section 1, we encounter the first 10, and they are all about inner purity, right speech, and sacred intention. Here, morality begins not with action, but with thought. Not with law, but with vibration. The journey toward Ma'at begins inside. I have not committed sin. I have not committed robbery with violence. I have not stolen. These are not mere legal offenses. In the ancient worldview, to sin was to disturb the harmony of existence, to rob, to lie, to steal. These acts created energetic imbalance. They were not wrong because they violated human codes, but because they disrupted Ma'at, the cosmic order that sustains all life. Purity of the heart was everything. The Ib, the heart, was the seat of moral consciousness. It recorded every impulse, every choice, every unspoken motive. The first laws of Ma'at demanded not outward compliance, but inward integrity. I have not uttered lies. I have not uttered curses. Here, speech becomes sacred because the ancients knew that words carry power. Every word is a vibration, and every vibration has consequence. To speak truth is to align with the cosmos. To speak falsely is to dissonate with the divine. This is why right speech was a spiritual discipline. It wasn't enough to avoid lies. One had to speak with clarity, with intention, with reverence. In Kemet, words could build or destroy. They could bless crops or call down chaos. The tongue was not a tool. It was a temple. I have not raised my voice. I have not spoken deceitfully. These are reminders that harmony does not shout, truth does not distort. And the voice, when used in balance, becomes a carrier of light. But speech is only the extension of thought. And thought is the mirror of intention. Ma'at demanded not only what one said, but why one said it. This section of the laws focuses on the unseen roots of behavior, the soil beneath action. I have not acted with guile. I have not polluted myself. Here we see that the Kemetic understanding of sin was holistic. Physical impurity and moral impurity were reflections of the same imbalance. To pollute the body or the soul was to fall out of sync with the divine frequency of the universe. In the temple schools of Kemet, young students were trained not simply in reading and writing, but in character. They recited the laws of Ma'at, not as memory drills, but as daily affirmations. To say, I have not done evil was not to deny wrongdoing. It was to remind the self to choose harmony again today. These were mantras of memory and consciousness, tools to recalibrate one's spirit to the original frequency. In this first section, we see the foundation of all Kemetic morality, truthfulness, inner purity, and intentional living. It is a philosophy that begins not with the world, but with the self, not with power, but with presence. The ancient Africans knew that to change the outer world, one must first balance the inner world. And so they began with 10 sacred whispers of truth, spoken not to gods, but to the soul itself. This was the start of alignment. The soul speaking to its own shadow, the heart preparing to meet the feather, the vibration of Ma'at beginning with intention. If the first laws of Ma'at ask the soul to speak in purity, the next set commands it to act in justice. This is where the moral code of Kemet steps beyond the individual and into the collective, into community, into society, into the way we walk among others. Because Ma'at is not a private virtue, it is a shared vibration, a way of living that binds each person to the well-being of all. These are not laws of isolation. They are declarations of how to live with compassion, fairness, and responsibility. I have not caused the shedding of tears. This law says everything it tells us, that justice is not merely about laws and courts, but about the effect we have on others. If our words, our actions, or our silence cause pain, we are no longer in Ma'at justice. In the Kemetic world, begins with empathy. It begins with the question, have I preserved the dignity of those around me? I have not caused pain. I have not harmed the weak. These laws are direct, uncompromising. They hold a mirror to every society and every soul. In Kemet, the moral worth of a person, or even a king, was measured by how they treated the most vulnerable: the sick, the elderly, the hungry, the poor. To harm them was not just immoral, it was anti-cosmic. It violated the balance upon which the entire world rested. One of the most profound declarations in this section is, "I have not withheld food." It is not enough to avoid stealing. You must give. You must feed the hungry. This law turns justice into action, into responsibility. In a society governed by Ma'at, abundance must circulate. Resources must nourish the whole. There is no virtue in hoarding. There is only alignment when generosity flows freely. I have not robbed the poor. I have not oppressed the orphan. I have not taken milk from the mouths of children. These are not just poetic lines. They are social contracts. They reveal that Ma'at was not a passive force floating in temples or stars. She lived in the marketplace, in the home, in the field, in the silence between two people choosing kindness over cruelty. Ma'at was the principle that turned civilization into communion. Kemet understood what many modern systems have forgotten, that justice is not a structure. It is a spirit, not an institution to be built, but a path to be walked. The phrase justice is not an institution. It is a way of living, reflects this truth. In the Kemetic worldview, fairness was not outsourced to kings or judges. It belonged to everyone. Every soul bore the responsibility to protect balance through honesty, generosity, and the courage to shield those who could not shield themselves. These laws were not warnings. They were declarations. The soul did not say, "I tried not to do harm." It said, "I did not." There is a confidence, a sacred clarity in these words. They are spoken from a place of reflection, not denial. From a life lived in deliberate alignment with Ma'at. This section of the 42 laws reveals something crucial, that righteousness is not just about the self, but about one's role in the world. That justice is not blind, it is deeply seen. That to be in Ma'at is to walk gently, give freely, and speak only when the truth serves. In Kemet, justice was not a courtroom verdict. It was a daily decision, a living frequency, a communal balance. And every action, from offering bread to protecting a stranger, was another step on the path toward a heart light enough to rise. There is no separation between the sacred and the natural in the worldview of Ma'at. Where modern thought divides spirit from soil, the people of Kemet saw no such split. The earth was not a resource. It was a relative. Rivers were not bodies of water. They were bodies of memory. Trees were not objects in the landscape. They were breath made visible. To honor Ma'at was to honor the land, the air, the animals, and the waters. In these next laws, the soul affirms not only its moral life, but its ecological footprint. Because in Kemet, to harm earth was to harm Ma'at. I have not polluted the water. The Nile was more than a river. It was a living artery of Ma'at, flowing with rhythm and sacred purpose. Water gave life, carried offerings, and mirrored the stars. To poison it, to block it, to disrespect it, these were not environmental crimes. They were spiritual desecrations. The ancients believed that water remembered, and what one poured into it literally or symbolically flowed back. I have not stopped the flow of rivers. This was not just about physical dams. It was about the deeper harm of disrupting natural cycles, of interrupting what was meant to move freely. In a civilization that depended on the annual flood, the rhythm of the river was law. One could not own it. One could only live in harmony with it. I have not destroyed vegetation. The earth was never seen as inert ground. Every tree, every blade of papyrus was part of Ma'at's breath. Vegetation was medicine, shelter, offering, and shade. To destroy it without reason was to disrupt the balance of life. Farming, harvesting, building, all were done with ritual, with gratitude, with understanding that nature is not conquered, but cooperated with. I have not harmed sacred animals. In Kemet, animals were not symbols of the divine. They were expressions of it. The ibis of Thoth, the lion of Sekhmet, the crocodile of Sobek. These were not metaphors. They were manifestations. Even the common cat, so beloved in Kemetic homes, was treated with reverence because it carried something beyond itself. To harm these beings was not a minor offense. It was a disruption of cosmic law. I have not desecrated sacred places. I have not destroyed offerings to the gods. These laws point to a way of life rooted in stewardship. Every altar, every shrine, every sacred grove was a node in the web of balance. To damage these spaces was to weaken the spiritual infrastructure that held the world together. The ancients knew what modern societies have forgotten: that sacred space is not luxury, it is necessity. But perhaps the most powerful truth in this section is this: nature itself was sacred life. The laws were not about controlling the environment. They were about respecting it as an elder, a teacher, a mirror. Every act toward nature, cutting a tree, drawing water, walking a path, was meant to be done in awareness. Because creation was not a backdrop. It was part of the divine conversation. This section of the 42 laws reveals the ecological heart of Ma'at long before climate debates or sustainability movements. The people of Kemet lived by a code that demanded reciprocity with the natural world. The land was not an object to be consumed, but a living entity to be balanced with. In today's fractured world, these ancient affirmations read like prophecies. As waters are polluted, forests burned, animals driven to extinction, and air thick with human carelessness, Ma'at whispers still, this is not balance. And so the soul, standing before the scale, must say with certainty, I have not defiled the earth. I have not broken the bond between life and life. Because in Ma'at, justice is not just between humans. It is between humanity and the world that birthed it. To harm the earth is to fall out of harmony. And to walk with Ma'at is to walk gently. At the final stretch of the soul's testimony, the laws turn inward once more, but this time with greater gravity. These last 10 affirmations are not about actions alone, nor even speech. They are about the inner architecture of the self. They reach into the realm of spirit, character and purpose, the silent motives, the emotional mastery, the unseen intentions that shaped a lifetime. In the Hall of Two Truths, these laws determine whether the soul has become what it was always meant to be, a reflection of balance, a vessel of Ma'at. I have not acted with arrogance. I have not magnified my condition beyond what is right. Here we meet the ancient African view of the humility, not as weakness, but as alignment. The soul must remember its place in the cosmic order. To place the self above others, above truths, or above purpose, is to fall out of rhythm. The ancients knew what we often forget. That character is not measured by status, but by how gently one walks with power. I have not been angry without cause. I have not allowed my heart to rule over my reason. These are not emotional suppressions. They are declarations of mastery. In Kemet, the heart was not meant to be caged, but calibrated. Emotional intelligence was sacred. Rulers were expected to govern not just lands, but their own impulses. Every person was seen as a small universe. If that inner world was chaotic, so too would the outer world become. I have not spoken scornfully. I have not stirred up confusion. These laws speak to the ethics of influence. Words create reality. Tone shapes thought. The one who sows division, who ridicules others, who causes chaos through manipulation. That one disfigures truth. Right judgment in this context is not just about decisions. It is about discernment, the ability to know when to speak, when to listen, and when to be still. Then come the affirmations of purpose. I have not abandoned my obligations. I have not been idle. In my art, every soul is born with a role, not a job or title, but a contribution to the harmony of the whole. Purpose is not ambition, it is alignment. The soul must be able to say, I fulfilled what I came to do. Whether king or farmer, artist or parent, the work matters because it adds to the balance of the world. And finally, I have not diminished the light of the day. A poetic phrase, yes, but also a powerful one. To diminish the day is to rob the world of your presence, your courage, your clarity. It is to live in shadows when the soul was born to shine. The ancients believed that every person carried light. These last laws ask whether that light was nurtured or neglected. These final declarations prepare the soul for the weighing. For in the end, it is not wealth or titles or even good deeds alone that determine one's place. It is the weight of the heart, shaped by virtue, steadied by emotional clarity, guided by inner truth. The soul that walks with balance does not fear the scale. It becomes the balance. It becomes Ma'at. This is the most sacred moment. After all declarations have been spoken, after the soul has laid bare every intention, every action, every silence, now comes the silence of the scale. In the Hall of Two Truths, time slows. Breath stills. The cosmos watches. This is not punishment. It is not fear. It is truth. And truth does not shout. It simply waits. Before the scale stands the soul. On one side, the heart. Not just an organ, but the record of a lifetime. Every thought, every motive, every word lives here. The ib is not swayed by appearances. It knows, it remembers. On the other side, the feather of Ma'at, light, perfect, eternal. This is no ordinary feather. It is the measure of all things. To live in Ma'at was to live lightly, without deceit, without oppression, without imbalance. The feather descends gently without sound. It does not accuse. It simply is. And then the heart is placed. The weighing begins. To the side, silent and waiting, is Amut, the devourer. Part lion, part crocodile, part hippopotamus, she embodies dissolution. But she is not evil. She is the boundary between truth and chaos. If the heart is heavy, bloated with lies, violence, selfishness, Amut consumes it. There is no torture, no fire, just erasure. The soul ceases to be, not as vengeance, but as balance reclaimed. Osiris, ruler of the underworld, sits in still majesty. He does not intervene. He observes. He is the measure of what endures beyond life, of what is eternal and just. Thoth, the scribe of wisdom, records the result he does not speak. His hand moves with divine precision. What is written becomes a reality. And if the heart is light, if it balances with the feather, then something miraculous occurs. The soul becomes an ark, a shining one, an illuminated ancestor. Not a ghost, but a guiding force. One who joins the stars, whose presence endures in the whispers of wind, in the roots of trees, in the bloodline of generations. This is not judgment. This is return. This is Ma'at. And in this moment, the soul is either scattered or it becomes eternal light. Now let us be clear. Ma'at is not a religion. It is not a list of commandments carved in stone to be obeyed under threat of punishment. It is not a system of fear, guilt, or blind obedience. Ma'at is something far older and far deeper. It is a way of being, a frequency of truth, a pattern woven into the fabric of the cosmos itself. The ancient Africans did not fear the divine, they harmonized with it. The 42 laws of Ma'at were not imposed rules. They were affirmations of resonance, each one a reflection of how to live in sync with the universe. No deity demanded worship through fear. No heaven dangled as a reward. No hell loomed as a threat. Instead, there was balance, and the invitation to align with it. To live in Ma'at is not to be perfect. It is to be present. To act with awareness, to move through life conscious of your impact on others, on nature, and on your own soul. There is no perfectionism in this worldview. Mistakes are not sins. They are dissonances, opportunities to return, to recalibrate, to walk in truth once more. Modern viewers may look at the 42 declarations and see rules. But they are not rules, they are reminders. Not laws in the judicial sense, but reflections of a lived truth that governs everything from the stars to the soil. Ma'at is alignment, not submission, not control, but sacred balance. This is the philosophy that predates empire, scripture, and dogma. It is not religion. It is not doctrine. It is a compass, a vibration. And it is still calling us not to fear, but to remember. Ma'at is not about believing. It's about being in tune with the truth that has always been.
Ma'at was never buried, not truly. Though the temples fell and the feathers faded from stone, her frequency remained, low, steady, and waiting. And now, in our time, that ancient vibration is rising again. Across Africa and the diaspora, across continents and cultures, a sacred remembering is stirring. The world is beginning to rediscover what was never truly lost. Ma'at is eternal, and balance is returning. In Southern Africa, the philosophy of Ubuntu breathes Ma'at in new form. I am because we are. It is not just a phrase, it's a legal principle in Ubuntu courts, where justice is not about punishment, but a restoration. Here, community elders gather not to condemn, but to heal. Offenders sit with the people they've harmed, they speak, they listen, they weep. And in that sacred exchange, balance is pursued, not through fear, but through connection. Across the continent, community justice systems are reviving ancient ways, from the palaver trees of West Africa to the councils of the Sahel. People are returning to systems that understand justice as harmony, not hierarchy. These echoes of Ma'at do not seek to dominate, they seek to realign. In spiritual spaces too, Ma'at rises. African spiritual revival is no longer hidden. The oracles speak, the drummers gather, the sacred altars return. People are lighting candles not to summon gods, but to remember rhythm, the rhythm of truth, of ancestry, of soul. Ecological wisdom too is being reclaimed. The young are learning from the old, planting trees, honoring rivers, understanding that sustainability is not a trend, it's a return to an ancient way of knowing, that the earth is a temple and our survival depends on reverence. And in the diaspora, from Harlem to Haiti, from London to Lagos, there is a growing flame of ancestral consciousness, a remembering that we are not ruthless, that our history stretches beyond slavery, beyond colonization, beyond distortion. We are children of balance. Ma'at is not in the past. She is our path forward, because Ma'at is not ancient. She is always now. And in every corner of this awakening world, her voice whispers again, return, realign, remember. Balance is not lost. Balance is returning. The feather still falls. Even now, as the world spins faster and the noise grows louder, it falls softly, silently, through the chambers of every soul, not in temples of stone, not only in myths passed down, but in your thoughts, your words, your choices. Ma'at was never bound to the past. She was never ancient. She is eternal. She is the unseen rhythm beneath all life, the quiet law that governs galaxies and governs you. And a feather still waits at the scale. Every thought you form carries weight. Every word you speak hums with vibrations. Every action, no matter how small, adds to the balance or tips it. In this world of noise and rush, it's easy to forget that the universe still listens, that truth still echoes, that justice is not just a system, it is a song your life is singing every day. Ma'at does not ask for perfection. She asks for presence, for clarity, for honesty. She does not threaten. She invites to align, to return, to remember. Every moment is a new skill. Every day, a new chance to walk in harmony with the earth, with others, with yourself. Every decision a question whispered back to you. Is this in balance? And so you stand now, not in the hall of two truths, but in the hall of this world, where your heart is weighed not once, but every day. The feather still falls, gently, constantly, waiting for the answer only you can give. Live lightly, walk in truth, become the balance. And if this journey moved you, don't let it end here. Like this video to honor the ancestors. Share it so others can remember. Subscribe to History Store for more sacred stories, lost truths, and the timelines they tried to erase, and tell us your thoughts below. Your reflections, your lineage, your memories. Because when we speak, history lives again. The feather still falls, the truth still rises. And you are part of the balance.